If you are considering moving to Fort Collins, Colorado, or you live in Fort Collins, neither buying or renting or even selling, you are absolutely going to want to listen to this video. The Land Development Code just had a major transition, first time in 25 years. And in this video, we are going to talk to you about what I would do if I was looking at buying, selling, or investing here in Fort Collins, Colorado. What's up, everybody? My name is Patrick Soukup with Soukup Real Estate Services here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And this is the Living in Fort Collins YouTube channel. It's all about living, eating, sleeping, playing, real estate. And speaking about real estate, we are licensed real estate agents in the state of Colorado. So if you're considering buying, selling, or investing, give us a call, text, or email. We've got your back. Now, without any further delay, let's jump into the 5 things that I would take into consideration considering the recent changes in the Land Development Code change. Number 1, probably the lowest barrier to entry and the most easily understood, not necessarily the easiest process, but would be to add accessory dwelling unit to your property, an ADU. Now in Fort Collins, they can be in any zone throughout the entire city, and they supersede HOA rules. So HOAs can't come in and play the white knight of, no, we're not gonna have any ADUs in our subdivision. Sorry, the Land Development Code supersedes that. So yes, of course, you're gonna have to go through code requirements for parks, forestry, streets, fire department, all the different code. You're still going to have to go by and pass all of that, but you are not going to have a neighborhood meeting. It's just going to go through a basic review development. The cost of that, the timing of that process is going to be expedited. And all of a sudden, you could build a 600 to 1,000 square foot ADU on your property, depending on the lot size and square footage of your house, for $150,000 to $200,000, depending on the size. And you could potentially rent that thing out for $1,500 to $2,000 when you're looking at about $2 to $2.50 per square foot. So I would say you could easily add a rental income by adding an ADU to your property. Number 2, this is probably going to relate mostly to Old Town properties, specifically because of the value of the lots, but subdividing your lot. They reduced the lot sizes, minimal lot size, from 6,000 to 4,500 square feet. So to subdivide your lot, to divide it into 2 different separate parcels, you used to have a 12,000 square foot lot. That is no longer the case. You can now have a 9,000 square foot lot and subdivide it into 2 4,500 square foot lots. Now the value of this and the back end, what it does to diminish the value of your property, is definitely something to take into consideration. But this, I would have to say, is probably for those that either have got a really big property that can still subdivide their lot without really diminishing the value of their lot, and cut out 4,500 square foot lot to sell to the market for, I would say a quarter of an acre in Old Town with a water tap is probably worth about $500,000, depending on where you are within that Old Town area. So a 1/10 of an acre with a water tap would probably be around $200,000. Without a water tap, probably around $150,000 for that 1/10 of an acre lot. So if you want to decrease your principal amount, decrease your kind of stake in the property, or just get cash to play with, there is some upfront cost between attorneys, surveyors, going through the review process, probably anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 after having talked with a developer. But you could have an infusion of cash and decrease your principal, or again, for people who may have owned their property for 20, 30 years and owe very little, maybe are on a fixed income but need to generate some money while not losing their house, this might be a great opportunity for them to subdivide their lot, get $100,000, $150,000, and be able to buy their new car, pay off their loan, whatever that might be. Number 3, and this is kind of a parlay in on your ADUs, but transitioning your single family house that might be a bi-level or something along those lines, or a ranch with a basement, into a fully functioning duplex and possibly even triplex. Now, if you're gonna build a triplex, that unit has to have an income restriction and an affordable unit for 99 years. It has to be deed restricted affordable housing for 99 years. Now, the numbers that back that really don't do too much, because the average rent in Fort Collins for a 950 square foot apartment is about $1,800, $1,850. And when you take into consideration the area median income is about $111,000 in Fort Collins, 30% of the 60 to 80% area median income is the maximum amount of money can be spent on rents. And when you take those equations into place, whether it's 60% to 80% of that $111,000, 30% gets you to about $1,650 to $2,150 per month in rent. So while yes, it does qualify as affordable housing, it doesn't limit you too much, but it's definitely something to take into consideration. So you can convert that house that has a ranch with a basement into a fully functioning duplex, add an ADU on there for a triplex type living situation. And from there, you're able to rent that property out that maybe you bought for $550,000, $600,000. You put on a $150,000 ADU, and your return starts to get really pretty attractive as far as a pure investment play goes. Now, number 4 is probably more for your professional developer investor types, bigger pockets, but they've increased the amount of units per acre from 9 to 12 in specific zones, and also decreased the parking requirements for 1-bedrooms and studios from 1.5 spaces per bedroom to 1 space per bedroom. So you could potentially build more units on the lot size and decrease the amount of parking spaces you have, so your envelope can go on much bigger space without having to have those parking spaces go. So there's already been one development kind of presented to the city development review of a 40-unit apartment complex that may or may not get passed, but is leveraging the new land development code change. And again, when Fort Collins decided to make these changes for the land development code, there was some goals that were really driving this change, and that was to increase housing capacity, increase affordable housing, make the land development review more easily read, make it more predictable, and then also really allowing more increased housing along these transportation paths. And the city plan, the economic plan, the housing plan, the carbon footprint, all of these different things kind of went into mold what this new land development code changes. And a lot of this is density in and around Old Town to make it a more 15-minute walkable city. So public transportation, biking, walking, all of these things are trying to get more dense around Old Town. So this could impact the people that live in and around Old Town, which there is a petition going around. We'll talk about that when we end this video, but there is a petition going around to overturn this change. But I would say this is more of your developer specific hit it as far as from 9 to 12 units, from 1.5 spots to 1 spot. But that being said, that's number 4, the increased units per acre allowed. And number 5, this one's kind of interesting, specifically because I have a client that they've been looking for a property that really has an ADU on it. So they've kind of been limited around the Old Town area because there was 3 zones that allowed ADUs prior to this change. And it was because his dad, they want to have their dad age in place with an ADU on property so that they could take care of them, save some costs, live close to their parents. But that would be something that I would take into consideration, especially with the cost of housing and the reach outs that I've gotten from previous clients of they want to buy with a partner and split the equity and things of that nature. But the idea of multi-generational living and potentially setting up an LLC or just a not verbal, you definitely wouldn't want a verbal, a written agreement, operating agreement type deal when you're buying a property that you might buy it in tenants in common, that your ownership stake passes with the way that your will states rather than rights of survivorship. But you could buy it with a friend, a brother, sister, or a mom or dad, and be able to share some of these costs, but actually have 2 separate dwelling units on 1 lot. So for me, it really strikes for those individuals that have an aging mom or dad or brother, sister that needs help, that they can have a separate dwelling unit, buy a house, and then also build a separate ADU. And whether that's sharing costs on the loan, splitting the loan, down payments, sharing the cost of the ADU, leveraging two separate families' income abilities to buy one parcel but create two properties, which is very popular right now, multi-generational living, again, increasing the housing supply. But that's something that I would look at. For me, if I personally had a mom, or let's just my mom, that maybe she is single and wants to have a house or her own place, can't really afford a new home, but I've got a property, or I could sell my property, go buy a big one together, leverage my income to get the loan because she doesn't have any income except her fixed, so she wouldn't qualify. And then I could build a separate ADU with her help, whether it's some of their equity that she might have in some stocks or things of that nature, and be able to get her a separate house with me having my house, being away from each other enough, but also being able to help. So that's an idea for some individuals that might be looking at wanting to buy, but couldn't necessarily afford to buy two separate properties. So there you have it. Those are the 5 ideas that I would explore if I was willing to, or interested in buying or investing here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And if you're a seller, it's important that you understand these changes as well, because the value of your property and your land just changed pretty dramatically, especially if you're on a bigger lot, have the ability to buy an AD or build an ADU, or have a kind of a non-conforming duplex, or there's just so many different ways that this has just changed a lot of real estate values that we're completely staying in touch with and really diving in on. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, whether that's email, text, or calling. Or if you're considering buying, selling, or investing, again, we are here. We are licensed real estate agents and happy to help. Now, I wanted to end with this, that we are also seeing a petition being formed to overturn this land development code change, which may happen. You never know. They have to get about 4,000 signatures by the end of December for this to go to City Council. And then if City Council overturns it or it goes to a vote, it could get extended till next November for the city to vote on it or make changes. Eventually something is going to happen or go back to the drawing board. But for me, I would wait until the end of December to determine whether I'm going to proceed forward with these investments, these drawings, these thousands and thousands of dollars that I would spend to go through this development process. But come January 1st, 2023, we should know whether that, at least for a minimum a year, this new land development code change is going to take effect and how it's going to impact those people who own real estate in Fort Collins, Colorado, their values, their buying propositions. But this is extremely important, so definitely feel free to reach out. Stay tuned. We might do a part 3 of this land development code change, with whether that might be the alternative perspectives or things that might change moving forward and more clarity, maybe a question and answer type video. So again, appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, have a look at this video and it might help you learn a little bit more about Fort Collins. Take care.